I wanted to make this video about Livewire Forms, but I didn't want it to be just concepts and snippets of code and things that you can already get from the documentation. Instead, what I want to do is show you a small, simple project that I thought about, and maybe we can just do it all together. And as a bonus, just so that you don't see bare bones HTML on screen, things that don't really look good, I'm going to use something that I haven't used before, which is Mary UI. I don't know if you have heard about this, but it's just a collection of components made in Livewire and Tailwind CSS. So I'm going to use that for the first time, and I'm going to create a simple project to remember birthdays for people that you know of. So yeah, let's just jump in and let's do this together. I'm going to start with a new project, Laravel new, and let's call it Laravel birthdays. I'm not going to use a starter kit because apparently Mary UI will give you everything you need. So let's do no starter kit. I'm going to choose PES, but I'm not going to do any testing in this project, and I am going to share the code with you. So let's just initialize a Git repository. And now let's get into our project and let's start bringing the requirements. I'm going to start with Mary UI because that it's also going to install Livewire 3. So let's go to mary-ui.com, click on get started, and let's follow the documentation to install it. So it's going to be a composer require, and let's paste this in the terminal. And now we need to do PHP artisan Mary install. And I think this is what, yeah, that's what brings in Livewire/Vault. Let's say yes. And then install with npm. Oh, and by the way, this does use Daisy UI, or it's building on top of Daisy UI, which is a gallery of components built on, if I'm not mistaken, Alpine.js and Tailwind CSS. So just so you know. Okay, let's jump into VS Code and open this project. And let's see what we got out of the box. So I'm going to open a terminal right here and just start a new PHP development server. And also add a new terminal for a Vite development server. And right out of the gate, we have a complete application. That's impressive. And it looks good too. But let's modify this to fit our application. I'm not going to need a sidebar, for example. And I'm not going to need these filters. So let's go ahead and find where this template is and modify it. I'm guessing it's going to be in resources, views, components, layouts. Let's check out the layout first. And yeah, here is the nav bar for mobile only. We're going to take that off. And where's the one for desktop? This one here, xlot sidebar. Let's take this off completely. What I did there is this goes from here all the way down here. So let's remove that. Let's see how that looks. Okay, looking good. And now let's check out the main or the content, which I'm guessing is in views Livewire. And the only file is called welcome. We're going to rename that, by the way. We have a header. We have a table. Well, that's small. That's pretty cool. And we have a filter drawer. We're not going to need that. So let's remove this drawer. I'm guessing that's for, let's check. When you click filters, you have a complete drawer for adding and resetting filters. We're not going to use that, but that's pretty cool to have. I think we're going to go with models for this project since it's pretty simple. So let's remove this drawer here. And looks like this is coming from users. So we have a users variable that contains all of the users. And let's check the component for this. Guessing it's in app, Livewire, welcome. Yep, pretty clear. We have filters. We're not going to use filters in this case, so we can clear this function called clear. We do need the delete. We're going to modify that. Apparently the table uses an array to determine the headers and what column is it tied to in the database. So we have key with ID, name, age, email. And then we have a function called users, which gives us a collection, which probably will be modified to get data from the actual users table. Okay. And then we have the render where we pass the users and the headers. Pretty simple. Let's start renaming stuff and adding things that I need. For example, let's start with the database. I'm going to need to modify the migration for the users table because I want to have a date of birth added to that table. So let's go and find that. Database, migrations, create users table. Let's add one column. It's going to be a date. It's called a DOB, date of birth. Really simple. And just so that we have data to work with, I'm going to use what we have in the welcome.play.php, or actually in the component welcome. Yeah, I'm going to use this array to create 3 users that are going to be the same users, but in the database. So that then I can take the database data and put it in the table. So let's copy this 3 items and then find the database seeder class. Inside database, seeders, database seeder. And we already have some lines connected or commented here. So let's uncomment this first one. I'm going to create 3 users. And for the state of those, I'm going to use state, and then new sequence. I'm not going to change the ID. Let's keep name, email. The age I'm going to calculate based on the date of birth. So I'm not going to use date or age, sorry. Instead, let's just change that to DOB. And let's add 3 dates. So she was born in the year 2000. Let's say she was born in June 20th. Now Giovanna, that's 7 years old, so 2017. And let's go with March 10th. And I'm going to need one date that is before the current date. So let's go with January. So 5 years old, we're talking about 2019, January 1st. Okay, let's try this out. Open a terminal. I'm going to add a new terminal here and then run php artisan migrate. Would you like to create it? Yes, I do. And then php artisan db seed. Okay, cool. We have the database ready. Now let's go work on the model class. Well, there is nothing to do on the model class just yet. Let's work on the view and make sure that we can display the users from the database into the table. And why don't we rename this component? Instead of welcome, let's call it birthdays. So that means that the view is going to be Livewire birthdays. So let's rename that as well. Resources, views, Livewire birthdays. And I'm guessing the route needs to be changed as well. So let's go to routes, web, And we have only one route. Let's change this to birthdays. And something's broken. Oh, of course, the class name. All right, now let's change this to be coming from the database. So in the component, let's go down, and in the users, this is going to return a collection. That's fine. But instead of return collect, I'm going to say user all. We keep the sorting and we keep the search as well. Yeah, I don't see any issues with that. And now we have the same users, but they are coming from the database. And that was a long setup, but now we can start working on forms, which is the purpose of this video. So as I mentioned before, we are going to use models. So why don't we go and look for the models in the documentation. Model. Yeah, that looks good. Let's copy this. So we need a button to open it, but that button is going to be in the table, but I don't want it to be in JavaScript. So with Livewire, there is a my model. We can use this Boolean. Instead of a drawer, let's use, we're probably going to need two models, one for adding and one for editing. So let's do add model. And since we're not going to use this filters button, let's actually replace this with add, so that this will trigger the add button model. Sorry, the add model. So let's go down a bit and let's actually open the template, and the button is here. X button, filters, let's call it add. Instead of icon O funnel, let's do plus. That's good. And for the click event, I'm going to say wire add model equals true. And then let's go to the Mary UI documentation and let's copy this section here. So X model, wire my model, this is going to be modeled or bound to add model. Title is add birthdays or birthday. No need for a subtitle. Form goes here. Cancel will just close the model. So add model false. And then the confirm button. Actually, this is going to be replaced because the form, I think, has the save and cancel buttons. So this will change in a minute. But for now, let's just see how it looks. So we click add, there's the model, form goes here, we can cancel, we can confirm, that doesn't do anything, but we can also click away and that also closes the model. That's good. And if we click escape, that also closes the model. Is the search working? Ooh, it's not. I'm guessing this is the problem. It's suspecting an array here, but we are using user collection or a collection of user models. So let's try this. All right, perfect. Okay, let's create a form to add a new birthday. So let's go to Mary UI again. Let's look for forms. This is a good example. So you see there's an X form, wire submit, and we have two actions. So let's grab this and let's put it here, replacing also the X lot actions. And just to make sure that the actions work, let me just remove the inputs for 1 second. And the cancel button was supposed to do click equals wire add model false. Okay, that works. And of course, we don't have a save method yet, so it's going to fail on that button. But at least we can open it and close it. Okay. Now we can add our inputs. Let's start with the name. And we're going to need the name property on the component. So let's go ahead and take care of that real quick. Public string name. Okay, cool. Let's, what else we need? We are going to need email and date of birth. So for the email, we're gonna also use an input. So let's copy the one for name in the template. This is going to be email. Let me close a few things here that I'm not using. In the component, let's add another property for the email. And since we're here, let's add another one for the date of birth. And let's find a component for a date picker here. I believe I saw one. It's got to be in forms. Select date time. Here it is. This one should be enough. So X date time. And let's see how that looks. Click add, and yeah, it's looking fine. Now let's go ahead and add that save method. We can start by saying user create, and then we pass an array of data with name, email, and date of birth. And once we do that, we can do this reset. And this will clear out the values of the form. Okay, let's try it out. Oh, did we not bind the input? Apparently not. Wait, we did. Oh, but we need to add it as a fillable field in the model. All right, let's try that again. Oh, right, passwords. We don't have passwords. We're going to have to modify the table again. Remove the password. So let's open create users table again. Let's remove the string password. And since we're here, email verified at, we don't need that either. Nor remember token. Okay, let's refresh the database. PHP artisan migrate fresh. That's better. Now PHP artisan db seed. Oh, it's complaining about the email verified ad. That's probably because the model has this extends authenticable. Let's just extends model. We don't need notifiable either. And we don't need has API tokens. We don't need this. And we don't need this. At least not the email verified. We could use the cast DOB as date though. All right, let's try that again. Why are you trying to... Oh, the factory. Okay, sorry. Here we go. You go away. You go away. You go away. All right, that worked. Let me check the table here. Looking good. Let's try adding a new one. Test, test. And let's go a few years back. All right, that worked. So we have adding clear, but there are a few things that we need to fix. We need validation on the form. So let's take care of that. And luckily for us, adding validation to Livewire Forms is very easy. All you need to do is come up here to the property that the field is bound to and add attributes, or add an attribute called validate, which is in Livewire attributes validate, and this will take the rules that we need to apply to this field. For example, we need this to be required. Let's add one more to email. We need this to be required, and we need this to be a valid email. And for the date, we need this to be required. We need this to be a date, or actually let's just leave it at required. And before I forget, let's go into the template and change this label to save. Okay, let's try that out. Click on add, and without filling any data, let's click on save, and nothing happened. But actually something did happen. If we go into VS Code and check the database, I'm going to use PHP artisan tinker and then do user all. We have a new model here and it's empty. So it not only created a user, but used just empty strings for the values, which is not what we want. So to prevent that, first I'm going to delete this fake or empty user. So user find 6 delete. Now let's go back to the component, and in the save method, Before we use user create, I'm going to say this validate. All right, let's try that one more time. Click add without any data, click save. And now all of the validation errors are properly displayed thanks to Mary UI, which takes the error back from the form and just uses the values to display everything where it should be. If you were not using Mary UI to display the validation errors, you just have to use the error directive in the template and pass in the column that you want to validate or check for errors, and then this will conditionally display whatever error message you want to display. And the error message is placed in this message internal variable. Now what we can do is extract the form functionality into its own class. For this, we can use the PHP artisan Livewire form command. So I'm going to copy this, and instead of post form, let's use birthday form. This will create a new class inside app Livewire Forms birthday form, and let's see what that class contains. It's just a simple class that extends form, and then we can add things to this form. For example, let's just bring all of the fields that we need to validate into this class. So go back to the component here, scroll up, and let's grab these 3 fields, remove them from here, and add them to birthday form. And now to use this form, according to the documentation, all we need to do is create a public variable with the same class and then call it form. And then to extract the data from the form, we can use this form all. So let's go and rewrite our own component. First, we need the form variable. So let's do public birthday form. Let's go down to the save method here, and to this create. Now we're going to pass a call to this form all. Now, before we move on, there is one important change when we extract everything into a form class, and that is the wire model in the inputs and also the error bags. Instead of using wire model name, now everything is prefixed with form. So form name, form email, and form DOB. This also applies for the error bag. When you're checking for errors, you're going to check for form name, for email, and form DOB. Mary UI is going to do this for me, but if you're doing it yourself, just remember that use the error directive and check for this prefix form dot. Okay, let's save this and try it out. Click add, save, and everything is still working as expected. Let's try adding another user, and my birthday is, I have to go way back, 1980. Yes, I am old. August 23rd. And then click save, and there you go. A new user has been added. Now, why don't we also extract the save functionality out to the form? According to the documentation, you just have to add public methods to the form class and then use them in your component. So let's go back to our form component or form class and then add public function. Let's call it store as well. Here we call this validate to validate the form, and then user create and pass this all. Now we go back to our component, and in the save method, we don't have to do validate anymore. So we can remove that line. We don't need to use create here either. All we need to do is say this form store. Oh, and we can also move this reset line to the form class. Okay, so we have our form object and we can create users. Let's work on updating those users. What I'm going to do is create a new public function, and I'm going to call it field form. What I want to receive here is an instance of a user class, and I'll call it record. And then with that record, I'm going to fill the fields that the form is using. For example, this name equals record name. And I'm going to do this 3 more times, one for email and one for DOB. And then I'm going to create another public function, update. And here again, I'm going to do this validate. And now here I can update the user, but I'm going to need an instance of that user so that I can update it. So to solve that, let's go back up. And here I'm going to add another public property. This will be of class user, but it could be null. So let's use question mark user and let's call it record. And now in the field form, before setting all of the fields, let's just say this record equals record. And then back down to the update, I can say this record update and then pass this all. And finally, this reset. Okay, in order to update the user in the UI, I'm going to need another button. And let's go back to the template. We could probably add another action or another button here. Let's try that. Instead of trash, let's do maybe edit. And on wire click, I'm going to do edit and then pass the user ID. And this will be text. Let's go with, I don't know, purple maybe. Okay, that doesn't exist. Let's try, I think they're using hero icons. So let's try pencil square. Yeah, that worked. But I don't like that they are stacked. Maybe if I wrap everything in flex space X or gap X. No, space X. Okay, that's better, but I need this in front of the trash button. So let's move it up here like so. Okay, much better. Okay, so I'm going to need this edit function in my component. So let's go to here and let's add public function edit. I'm going to use implicit model binding. So user. And from here, I guess we can say this form, field form, and pass the user. And I suppose we're going to need another model. So let's quickly go up here. Let's add another Boolean, call it edit model. And back to the template, I'm going to copy this model, name it edit model, change the title, and the wire submit will go to an update method. It doesn't exist yet, but we'll create in a moment. And I'm guessing all of the wire models are going to stay the same. And the cancel should close edit model. Okay, let's see. Click edit on test. Nothing happens. Oh, that's because we are not setting this. Actually, let's do it after we fill the form. We can say this edit model equals true. All right. Everything except the date. Why is not showing up the date? I'm guessing because when we reference record DOB, this is going to be an instance of Carbon because we're casting that as a date. So maybe we have to do DOB format. Year, month, day. Let's try that. Click on edit and yeah, that works better. Now we need to create the method that is triggering this save and actually change this save to update. Let's go back to the component. No, actually the template. Look for the edit model. Change save to update. And now we need this update method. So let's go to our component, create a new function, call it update. And here we just have to call this form update. Okay, let's give it a try. Let's change this record to test updated. Oh, and just so you know, everything works the same. Validation still working because everything is extracted into the form class, which is working on its own. And let's change this to test updated and keep the email. Maybe change the date. And it worked, but the only thing that we didn't do is close the model. So let's fix that. So after we call this form update, let's say this edit model equals false. And I think we should do that as well on the save method. Okay, let's try it. The record is updated and the model closes and everything is working. Perfect. Now we have add, we have edit. All we need now is to delete the record, which is pretty simple. The functionality is already there. It's giving us just this toast. And let's actually delete the record. So in our component, let's locate that delete method. Here it is. And we are getting the ID here, so we can use implicit model binding to get the actual user instance. And then we can just say user delete, and then just send a warning. Well, this should not be a warning. This should be a success. Let's change that message to user deleted. Okay, let's give this a try. Let's click delete on the test user and we have the confirmation and it goes away. Okay, so I think we have all of the CRUD operations out of the way and we are using form objects. Let's actually polish this so that it actually displays birthday information. First thing I'm going to change is the title. Here in the header, let's change the title to birthdays. And then in the table, as you can see, we are displaying the age here. So I would like to calculate that age and display it here based on the date of birth from the user. So to do that, first, I'm going to look for the table here. And we can use another scope to customize how the column is displayed. So to do that, we use scope. And I believe it's cell and the name of the key or the name of the column, which is age, right? Let me check. So the key is age. So we need to use cell age. So now here I can just display whatever I want. Let's say faux. And this has to be like so. Oh, and also we need to pass in the current user or the current instance in the loop. And we do that with user. Oh, and you have to end the scope here. So it's not scope, it's end scope. All right, so we have the custom value here, but what I want to do is use the current user in the iteration and say user age. Now this age is going to be a custom property. So let's go to the user model. Let's add a public function, call it age. This is going to be an attribute actually. And then return attribute make. And this will take two functions, get and set. we are only going to need the get. And here we receive the value of the current attribute, but we are not going to use the value. What we need is the array of attributes of the model. So array attributes. So in this attributes array, what we have is string representation of all of the values in our model, including the date. So what we can do is say carbon and then parse attributes dob and then call diff in years and actually return that. So this diff in years is going to return an integer, and that is what the get function will return. Okay, let's see if that works. I'm missing something. Yeah, semicolon here. Okay, let's save and let's check that in the table. And after we refresh, we actually get the age based on the date of birth. Another useful piece of information would be to see or to know when is the next birthday of this person. So let's do that as another attribute as well. So I'm going to copy this and let's call it birthday. And here I'm going to need a couple of things. First, I need to know the current year. So let's say year equals carbon now. And let's return a format of just a year. Then I'm going to also collect the DOB from the user, again using carbon parse and the attribute DOB. And finally, I'm going to return carbon parse. And here I'm going to use the year, the current year, and then concatenate that with DOB format and just return the month and day. And I'm going to need one extra dash here. And this will give me the date of the birthday, but in the current year, not in the past. Now all I have to do is return diff for humans. And then change the return type to string. And then actually return or spell return as it should. And then once we have this, let's go to the template and in the table, let's add another scope. This time, let's call it birthday. And finally, let's add that key to the table in the component. And this column should be a lot wider, so let's make it 64. Okay, let's see that in the table. And as you can see, we have a column. Let me zoom in a little bit. We have a column with the birthday, and it's, in this case, it's 6 months from now, 1 month from now, and this one was 1 month ago. This one is in 3 months from now. Okay, that should be all for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you found any of this helpful, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.